Well, now, it's time for promises with a price tag. Monday is election day. Both the Liberals and the Conservatives finally released their cost of campaign promises. First, let's look at the promises. Okay, so let's bring those up. This is a graphic, and it's a summary of the campaign platforms, really. We didn't hit everything, but we hit, I think, some of the highlights. We'll start with the Liberals. 1% cut to the lowest tax bracket, which will mean up to $825 in savings per dual income family. Double housing construction to 500,000 new homes per year. Maintain the $10 a day national child care program. Balance oil and gas with clean tech and cut permit wait to 2 years. Wait, what? 2 years? When I saw that today, I'm thinking, dear God, it's taking more than 2 years to get a project permitted in this country. And I know Christian has mentioned that in talking about some of the mining projects that are on the boards, about how long it takes to get a permit. So that's a lofty goal, 2 years, but why not just make it 1 year? Because we need to get some of these things rolling.
Right away, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Raise defense spending above NATO's 2% of GDP target. $5 billion trade diversification fund, job creation through infrastructure and export opportunities. And reduce the deficit from 1.96% to 1.35% of GDP by 2028-2029 fiscal year, and hold transfers steady. Therefore, Mark Carney, if he forms government, that one is going to prove to be a real thorn in his side, because you're not going to tell me for 1 second that the provinces will not be knocking on the door of a new government and looking for more. The hands will be like this. We need more in transfer payments. We need more for health care. We need more for this. You watch. That's not going to...
But the thing is, I think both you and I are all for that, as long as we have some sort of KPIs that actively measure what that particular government is using the money for. So if it's earmarked for healthcare, I don't want that going to the language police here in Quebec. You know what I mean? Like seriously speaking, if the money is earmarked for a particular program, you have to demonstrate that that's where it's going, or else there are penalties, fiscal penalties to have to account for, right?
Yeah, I totally agree with that at the healthcare and the education levels, there has to be better accountability. But before we throw any more money at the healthcare system, the federal government has to step in and say, we're doing a complete audit of every system across the country. Because we do not feel that we are getting the best return on investment for the money we are spending on healthcare systems. And we're just not going to throw more money at it, because the problem doesn't get fixed. It doesn't go away. As a matter of fact, in a lot of cases, it gets worse because the money's redirected to some other foolish thing. And I remember, again, being out in BC with the NDP government of Glenn Clark, who didn't want to lose union support. So every time a school board or the local health authorities wanted more money, the union types would threaten to go out on strike, and Clark would dig in and just hand over money with no accountability whatsoever. And in the 2 years I was there, with the money that was thrown, especially at healthcare in that province, they should have had the top healthcare system in the country. And they didn't, because the money just was absorbed into that great gaping hole known as their general revenue account.
Mm-hmm.
So that, like that really gets me going. But anyway, I'll get away from that now and let's go to the conservatives.
All right.
Drops lowest bracket from 15% to 12.75%, approximately $1,800 in savings per dual income family. Remove GST on new homes less than 1.3 million in cost. Fast track local approvals. And he has a whole bunch of things lined up for fast tracking local approvals, incentives for municipalities to move these things along in a hurry. Scrap carbon pricing for consumers, industry, and expand clean tech tax credits. Okay. No explicit defense spending increase noted. I know he was talking about a new base in the Northwest Territories, but beyond that, I haven't heard a whole lot either as to. Seems to me he was in Halifax a while ago, and he did commit to, I believe it was naval patrol vessels or
for our northern borders. Besides that, Gary, I agree. I haven't heard very much from him in terms of national defense.
Now I know when he did his campaign rollout or the platform rollout over the weekend, he did delve into increasing benefits and accessibility to medical treatments and things for veterans, which is full marks there on that one, for sure. Expand skilled trades training, boost direct trade-friendly tax policy. Okay. Cut deficit without cutting services, shrink the federal bureaucracy. And in the summary of Carney's take on the reducing the deficit, didn't really, holding transfer stay, but didn't really get into real details, but there was some talk about working on the size of the public service as, and that's the first thing that Poilievre's talking about here is shrink the federal bureaucracy, which has mushroomed in size. It started just prior to the pandemic, went out of control during the pandemic. We need more help, blah, blah, blah. Well, services never improved. And then most of these people that were hired temporarily are still temporarily
there. Yeah.
And doing what? Finally, Service Canada has come out with a private sector kind of promise of performance in the fact that if you apply for your passport and you don't receive it in 30 days, you get it free. Finally, because how many months have we gone with all kinds of delays in getting a passport renewal, getting a new passport, and all kinds of excuses, and no work, no results.
Yeah.
But every one of these promises carry a price tag somewhere. And I was watching an economist the other day, and he said, they can, especially on the bottom line here, they can talk about, we're going to increasing revenue by promoting this or promoting that, and we're going to cut taxes here or there. But those numbers never really materialize because there are all sorts of other things. They're kind of like some of the candidates on that meter-long ballot. They're ghosts.
Exactly. Well, Poilievre's last statement is pretty much something that all political parties will put on their platform: cutting deficits without cutting services. I can't remember the last time I saw a politician not say that. So it's a moot discussion point, and at the end of the day, both you and I, as consumers or citizens in Canada, tax-paying citizens, don't really ever see any benefit from that and have absolutely zero idea whether it's happening or not. Usually not, because when you're looking at the deficit report at the end of every year, when the budget comes out, the budget report, the deficit keeps on creeping up. So what happened to the cost cutting measures, right? So I don't know, Gary. It's I mean, the government bodies around Canada, United States, the rest of the world just. It's an amazing thing. Sometimes it's just a darn black hole, right? You and I can just look at it as a darn black hole. So, look, albeit to say, I mean, both candidates had some solid points. They made solid points with their platform releases, although the Conservatives, I thought, were somewhat late after the ballots had opened up in terms of voting stations this weekend, but they all pretty much come up with the same thing 80% of the time, with a smattering of 20% of different elements that they propose on doing, right? So, like you were saying, this particular election is based on not so much as the party, but a lot of decisions are based on the leader themselves. Whether it's Mr. Singh, Mr. Poilievre, or Prime Minister Carney, a lot of it is going to be based on character. And then the platform becomes very important, and we'll make a decision based on both, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we voted. Actually, Deborah and I and Jen walked up on Saturday around supper time.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah, and at that point, it wasn't overly busy. There were, there was a bit of a line, but not anything out of the ordinary. And it was steady. That's one thing I will say. They were telling me that on Friday that people were waiting. They were lined up outside and waiting about an hour and a half. And
yeah, I read about that.
Yeah, Friday seemed to be the day where we had the long lineups. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't know, Eddie, too, if it's important. People wanted to take advantage of, the time that they had over the long weekend, the Easter weekend, to maybe take a few minutes to go and vote because they felt it was important. But I think you're probably going to see more and more a shift to people voting earlier, just, doing it, and then they know it's done, it's over with. So when you think about it, Poilievre didn't release his platform, his caustic platform,
until yesterday, Tuesday. That is kind of late.
And Carney was on the weekend, But in some cases, how much at this stage of the game, how much of an impact does the release of that platform and cost platform really have on the average person?
Well, maybe if it was released earlier, maybe prior to the debate, maybe on purpose they didn't release it on debate because during the debate, prior to the debate, because it wouldn't have been a topic point during the debate. So strategically, all parties said, "Oh, we're going to do this later," and maybe all of this has been thrown up in flux, Gary, because of the snap election call. Right. Typically, there's more time to prepare for an upcoming election. So you have your staff already preparing your platform. So once the election is announced, you can communicate your platform to the citizens of Canada. There wasn't a whole hell of a lot of time this time around, right? Everything was done in, I'm not going to say in haste. We have a certain time frame in terms of how long an election can last, but it was a snap election. Even though Mr. Trudeau resigned a few months ago, it's still pretty snappy if you want to put it right. Otherwise, the election would have happened if Trudeau stayed on board, November of this year. That would have
scheduled for October.
October, right?
Yeah, but he wouldn't have made it past.
No, I get that, but the point I'm trying to make is that all political parties would have had up until October, knowing it was happening in October, to prepare for absolutely everything they might have to contend with from in the election, including communicating the platform to its citizens. Maybe it was done post haste, and there you go, people. I know it's a little late, but there it is, right? That's the feeling I get from this.
Just a quick note, Polyev says the Conservative platform will also save Canadians more than $56 billion between 2025 and 2029. Putting in place their programs will also require the Conservative government to carry a projected deficit of $31 billion this year. So, we're looking at the deficit financing all the way around. There's no, it's all in the red. There's no black. Really.
Yeah.
So let's have a quick look too. Where did he go? I just had the latest polling because I think we should be keeping an eye on that at this stage. But it seems to me when I looked last, let's see if I can find it here.
It bounces every day, doesn't it?
Yeah, up and down a bit. But the Liberals still maintaining 5 points over the Conservatives.
5 points.
Yeah. The Liberals picked up 0.9%. Mm-hmm. The Conservatives, their base popped up 1.5%. The Dippers are down 2.8%. They're down to 7.7%.
Yeah. And the Dippers were actually double digit not too long after the debate last week, right? And then they just drop right down again.
Yeah. And somebody said today, I thought I heard this on one of the news channels were going in the background while I was working, that Singh may be in third place in his riding.
Oh.
And I've heard Tom Mulcair say that he's been hearing that Francois Blanchette is in trouble as well in his riding. Speaking of Bloc, they're down 0.4%. They're sitting at 5.4%. The Green, they're up 0.7% at 3.4%. And the People's Party of Canada, why is that even there?
Yeah.
Really? 0.9%, and that's up 0.1%. Like, why?
Yeah. Well, Thomas Mulcair was also saying that if Mr. Singh does not have a resounding win, at least within the seats that he has right now, that he will not be the leader of the NDP coming up to the next election for sure.
He probably,
or let alone this year. He'll be gone this year. Sorry.
He'd be lucky to survive this year.
Yeah.
He'd be lucky to survive next month if he gets blasted out and the NDP lose some of those key seats.
Is that a message for Mr. Mulcair to rejoin politics?
Well, never knows, does one?
Well, you and I have talked about this over coffee from time to time, that, maybe he's right now a prime minister that never was, considering, the status of the NDP, what Canadians are looking for, a good balance between the Reds and the Blues. And you know what? He might make a splash out of this whole thing if he makes a decision to return to politics.
I think he's having too much fun, though, doing his
his op-eds,
and his editorial op-ed pieces and everything. He's having a
very well-spoken man.
Yeah. Oh, very much so. Love the panels that he's on. I love when CTV has, through the afternoon and cutting in and giving his thoughts on whatever it is at the time.
Right.
Yeah, I'd love to sit down and have a conversation with him at some point. So, yeah, you never know. You never, ever know. And here's the other thing. If I'm Pierre Poilievre, knowing the history of the Tories, I'd be looking over my back and over my shoulder now, watching for the blue knives coming for my back. This was the prime minister in waiting.
Yeah.
4 months ago. Double-digit lead. And now?
Gary, I think in October or end of September in one of our shows, both you and I think said that, he's probably going to be the next prime minister of Canada. I think it was October sometime. Wow, what a change. Unreal.
Blanchette was on the verge of being the opposition.
Opposition leader on top of that, yes.
Yeah. So, wow, did things ever change? Yeah. Trudeau was gone. They probably were preparing for that aspect, but again, the person who shall remain nameless in the White House kind of threw a complete monkey wrench into a lot of things, including the political scene here.
Yeah,
but
true.
Still, when you look at Poilievre's, the perception that people have of Poilievre as far as leaders, concerned, he's really trailing Carney as far as the preferred prime minister.
Prime minister, yes.
And again, I think, and I'm hearing more of this kind of conversation that you and I started talking about when we first started the show back in September, and that is he's got to get away from the attacks and the slogans and everything else.
Yeah.
Start acting like a prime minister in waiting. He didn't.
And especially when he had the largest audience at his feet during the two debates, especially in the English debate, Gary. I mean, both you and I saw it. It was nonstop. Oh, last 10 years. Oh, you're like Mr. Trudeau and yada. It was nonstop. And as someone who hadn't decided who he was going to vote for, that particular moment, just seeing him with the same old Pierre Poilievre, as opposed to speaking to the people about what he's going to do to make this country better, was just constant attacks. So you know what? He screwed that one up royally, for me at least, and I think a lot of folks would agree with me that he didn't come out on the winning side of that particular debate. If you want to pick a winner, he didn't do himself any favors, and shame on his campaign management team in not directing him away from that. No, unless he chose not to follow their guidance, their guidelines. It was a big failure. He just didn't do himself any favors. You and I are always saying, will the real Mr. Carney stand up, and will the real Mr. Poilievre stand up? I think we saw the real Mr. Poilievre stand up, and not in a good way, the last debate.
Except at the very end, when he was talking about meeting people and kind of got emotional, he showed a little bit of emotion.
He showed us humanity for the first time in that entire debate.
The Conservatives did not jump on that. Like, I didn't even really see any shorts or reels of that moment on social media. Why they didn't pick up on that? Because even a lot of the pundits thought that they would pick up on that. And what are they doing instead? They're rolling out Stephen Harper in an ad endorsing Poilievre and using the line that he used at one of the rallies. Both of these guys worked for me at one point.
Mm-hmm.
But he's sitting there behind the desk, and I think there are two other ads that are running now for the Conservatives, and Poilievre is not there. The people on screen are endorsing him.
So I think you're right. The Blues are going to come out with their knives after this.
Oh, listen, the Tories are notorious for getting the long knives out, and they're on the losing side. Look at the last 2 to 3 leaders. Oh,
yeah.
So. It's not like they're not experienced at doing this sort of thing.
Yeah.